"You do not belong in this area." Those words sounded ordinary in a crowded airport, but they carried a weight that would soon change the way everyone in that terminal saw the situation. The man standing quietly in front of Officer Ryan Caldwell did not look like someone with influence. He was wearing simple clothes, carrying a small travel bag, and waiting for his flight like thousands of other passengers that morning. There was no uniform, no visible military identification, no sign that the quiet traveler had spent years earning the respect of some of the most demanding professionals in the world. His name was Marcus Reed. To most people walking through the airport, he was just another passenger moving through a busy day. But hidden beneath his calm appearance was a story built on discipline, commitment, and service. Marcus had spent years as a Navy SEAL, dedicating his life to protecting others and representing the values of responsibility and honor. Yet, on this morning, none of that was visible. Officer Caldwell only saw what was directly in front of him. He saw a black man standing in an area where he believed he did not belong. He saw a situation he thought he understood within seconds. But sometimes the biggest mistakes happen when people believe they already know the entire story. The airport was filled with the familiar sounds of travel. Rolling luggage moved across the floor. Announcements echoed through the terminals. Families searched for their gates. Business travelers checked their schedules. Everyone was focused on their own journey. But near one security area, a quiet confrontation of assumptions was beginning. Marcus remained composed as Officer Caldwell questioned him. He did not raise his voice. He did not react with frustration. He simply answered with the same calm professionalism he had developed throughout his military career. That calmness seemed unusual to the officer. He expected resistance. He expected an argument. Instead, he found someone who refused to lose control of the moment. Imagine standing in a place where people judge you before they know your name. Imagine having the ability to reveal exactly who you are, yet choosing patience because your character matters more than proving a point. That was Marcus Reed. He understood something that many people never learn. Real confidence does not need to announce itself. Real strength does not need an audience. Officer Caldwell believed authority came from the badge he carried. Marcus understood that authority came from responsibility and the way a person treated others. The difference between them was not only their positions. It was their understanding of what power truly meant. Marcus had no desire to create a scene. He was not looking for special treatment. He simply wanted to continue his journey. But the officer did not know that the person he was questioning was not an ordinary traveler. He did not know about the years of service behind Marcus's silence. He did not know about the sacrifices, training, and dedication that shaped the man standing before him. And most importantly, he did not know that the quiet passenger he underestimated was someone whose name carried a level of respect far beyond that airport terminal. At that moment, Officer Caldwell believed he was dealing with someone who had no power. He had no idea that the truth hidden behind Marcus Reed's silence was about to change everything. Marcus Reed remained standing near the security area, watching the busy airport continue around him as if nothing unusual was happening. Travelers moved toward their gates. Announcements filled the terminal, and the rhythm of the morning continued. But for Marcus, the moment had become a test of something he had practiced throughout his entire life: patience under pressure. Officer Ryan Caldwell still believed he understood the situation. From his perspective, he was simply enforcing airport procedures. He believed his role gave him the responsibility to question anyone who seemed out of place. But the difference between responsibility and assumption was becoming clearer with every passing second. Marcus did not respond with anger. He did not try to use his background to gain special treatment. He simply stood calmly and answered each question with the same discipline that had guided him through years of military service. That calmness came from experience. Marcus had learned that the strongest response was not always the loudest one. Sometimes, the greatest display of confidence was remaining respectful when others expected a reaction. Officer Caldwell noticed something different about him. Most people in stressful situations became nervous or defensive. Marcus remained steady. He spoke carefully. He listened before responding. Those small details created a contrast that was impossible to ignore. Caldwell saw a passenger. He did not see the years of training behind that composure. He did not see the countless hours Marcus had spent preparing himself to make decisions in difficult environments. He did not see the commitment of a man who had chosen a life built around service and responsibility. Imagine having an entire history that nobody around you can see. Imagine carrying experiences that shaped who you are, while others judge you based only on a few seconds of observation. That was the reality Marcus faced in the airport that morning. He understood that people often make decisions based on what is visible. But he also knew that what is visible is rarely the complete truth. Marcus had never measured himself by recognition. During his years as a Navy SEAL, he learned that the mission was always more important than personal attention. The goal was never to prove how capable he was. The goal was to serve with honor. That same mindset followed him everywhere, even when he was no longer wearing a uniform. Officer Caldwell continued asking questions, unaware that the person in front of him represented the very qualities he claimed to value. Discipline, responsibility, commitment. Marcus carried those qualities quietly. He did not need to announce his achievements because they were already part of who he was. Around them, a few travelers began noticing the interaction. They noticed the difference in attitude between the two men. One was focused on control. The other was focused on remaining respectful. The situation was not about who could speak louder or who had more authority in that moment. It was about understanding the difference between a position and true character. Caldwell had a badge that showed his role. Marcus carried a lifetime of actions that showed his values. Neither man realized that the truth about Marcus's identity was much closer to being revealed. A simple question about a passenger's background would soon uncover a story that went far beyond an airport conversation. And when that truth became known, everyone would see that the quiet man standing calmly in front of the officer had never been ordinary at all. The airport continued moving around Marcus Reed, but the quiet moment near the security area had become something much deeper than a simple conversation. To everyone passing by, it looked like an ordinary interaction between an officer and a traveler. But beneath the surface, two very different understandings of authority were standing face to face. Officer Ryan Caldwell believed he was dealing with someone who needed to explain himself. Marcus Reed understood that he was experiencing a moment where patience mattered more than proving a point. Marcus had spent years learning that discipline was not only about following instructions. It was about controlling emotions, staying focused, and making decisions based on principles rather than pressure. Those lessons followed him long after his days of wearing a military uniform. Before becoming the quiet traveler in the airport terminal, Marcus had built a life around service. His journey began years earlier when he decided to join the United States Navy. He was not looking for attention or recognition. He was searching for a purpose greater than himself. Through years of demanding preparation and commitment, he earned the respect that came with becoming a Navy SEAL. But the title was never the most important part of his identity. What mattered was the responsibility behind it. Marcus learned that real service was not about being seen. It was about being dependable when others needed someone to step forward. He carried that mindset into every part of his life. Even without a uniform, even without anyone knowing his background, Marcus still represented the same values. Honor, discipline, responsibility. Those qualities were not something he turned on only when people were watching. They were part of who he was. Meanwhile, Officer Caldwell continued seeing only the immediate situation in front of him. He did not know the history behind Marcus's calm response. He did not know that the man standing quietly had faced challenges that required focus and self-control far beyond what most people ever experienced. He only saw a traveler and made a decision based on limited information. But Marcus knew something important. A person's true character is often revealed when they are misunderstood. Anyone can remain calm when everything goes their way. The real test comes when someone has every reason to react, yet chooses patience instead. Imagine carrying a story that could instantly change the way everyone treats you, but choosing not to reveal it because you believe respect should come before recognition. That was Marcus's mindset. He did not want special treatment because of his service. He wanted to be treated fairly because he was a person. The difference between Marcus and Officer Caldwell became clearer with every passing moment. Caldwell relied on the authority represented by his position. Marcus relied on the values built through years of commitment. One had a badge that showed his role. The other carried experiences that shaped his character. Neither man realized how close they were to discovering the truth. Somewhere inside the airport system, information connected to Marcus's travel details was beginning to reveal more than anyone expected. A simple interaction was about to become a lesson in how appearances can be misleading. Because the person Officer Caldwell believed he was questioning was not someone without influence. He was someone whose quiet presence represented years of dedication, sacrifice, and service. And soon, the airport would learn the identity behind the calm traveler who never needed to announce who he was. The airport terminal remained busy, but the atmosphere around Marcus Reed and Officer Ryan Caldwell continued to shift in a way that few people noticed at first. Travelers moved through the gates, employees handled their daily responsibilities, and announcements echoed across the building. Yet within that ordinary morning, a moment was unfolding that would soon reveal the difference between appearance and reality. Officer Caldwell still believed he understood exactly who Marcus was. In his mind, Marcus was simply another passenger who needed to answer questions and follow instructions. He did not see the years of dedication behind the quiet expression. He did not see the discipline developed through countless hours of training. He did not see the character built through a lifetime of service. Marcus remained calm because he had learned that difficult moments often reveal more about a person than comfortable ones. During his years as a Navy SEAL, he discovered that professionalism was not measured by how someone acted when everything was easy. It was measured by how someone responded when circumstances became challenging. That lesson stayed with him everywhere, including this airport terminal. As the conversation continued, a few people nearby began paying closer attention. They noticed that Marcus was not behaving like someone who felt intimidated or confused. He spoke clearly. He listened carefully. He carried himself with quiet confidence. There was something different about him, but nobody could immediately explain what it was. Officer Caldwell noticed the same thing, but he interpreted it differently. Instead of seeing discipline, he saw someone refusing to respond the way he expected. Instead of recognizing professionalism, he saw a situation he believed needed more control. The difference between them was not just about the airport or the questions being asked. It was about how each man understood authority. Caldwell believed authority was connected to the power of his position. Marcus understood authority as something earned through responsibility and trust. Imagine having a lifetime of achievements that remain invisible to everyone around you. Imagine standing quietly while people form opinions without knowing the journey that brought you there. That was the reality Marcus faced. He could have explained his military background. He could have mentioned his service. He could have changed the entire conversation within seconds. But Marcus knew that revealing his identity only to gain respect would miss the larger point. Respect should not depend on discovering someone's accomplishments. It should exist because every person deserves to be treated fairly. The moment became even more interesting when an airport employee reviewing passenger information noticed details connected to Marcus's travel records. Something about the information seemed familiar. A name appeared that carried significance beyond a simple airport encounter. The employee looked again, making sure there was no misunderstanding. Marcus Reed was not just another traveler moving through the terminal. He was connected to a world of service and responsibility that few people knew about. The realization had not reached everyone yet, but the first signs of the truth were beginning to appear. Officer Caldwell continued believing he was handling a routine situation. He did not know that the quiet passenger in front of him represented years of dedication and sacrifice. He did not know that the person he had judged within moments was someone respected far beyond the walls of that airport. And he certainly did not know that the truth about Marcus Reed was about to transform the entire situation. The information inside the airport system slowly began connecting the pieces of a story that nobody around Marcus Reed expected to discover. What started as a simple encounter between a passenger and an officer was becoming something much larger. The details connected to Marcus's travel records showed a name that carried a level of respect far beyond the airport terminal. The employee reviewing the information paused for a moment, looking carefully at the details in front of them. There was no mistake. Marcus Reed was not just another traveler passing through the airport. He was a Navy SEAL whose service represented years of commitment, discipline, and dedication. Yet even as the truth began to surface, Marcus remained the same calm person he had been from the beginning. He did not look for attention. He did not demand recognition. He simply continued standing with the same patience and professionalism that had defined him throughout his career. Officer Ryan Caldwell still did not fully understand what was happening. He had spent the entire interaction believing he was dealing with someone who needed to explain himself. Now, small details were beginning to challenge the assumptions he had made. The person he viewed as an ordinary passenger carried a history that could not be measured by appearance alone. Marcus had always understood that a uniform was only one part of a person's identity. When he wore one, people could see his role. When he traveled without one, they could only see the person. That was important to him because he believed character should exist with or without recognition. Throughout his years as a Navy SEAL, Marcus learned that the strongest professionals were not the ones who constantly reminded others of their achievements. They were the ones who remained committed even when nobody was watching. That lesson shaped the way he handled the airport situation. He knew he had the ability to change the conversation instantly by explaining who he was. But he also knew that the moment represented something bigger. If respect only appeared after someone's accomplishments were revealed, then the respect was incomplete. Imagine carrying years of service, sacrifice, and dedication while standing in front of someone who only sees a few seconds of your life. Imagine knowing the full truth about yourself but choosing patience because you believe actions speak louder than explanations. That was the position Marcus found himself in. Meanwhile, Officer Caldwell began noticing the reactions of people around him. The confidence he had earlier was replaced with uncertainty. The situation no longer looked as simple as he first believed. He started to realize that making quick judgments could lead to serious misunderstandings. The airport employee quietly confirmed the information connected to Marcus's background. The name, the records, and the details all pointed toward the same conclusion. Marcus Reed was a respected member of the United States Navy SEAL community. The discovery changed the atmosphere around them. The same person who had been treated like someone who needed to prove himself was now recognized as someone who had already proven himself through years of service. But Marcus did not celebrate the change in attitude. He did not use the moment to make anyone feel small. Instead, he remained focused on the lesson. The issue was never about receiving special treatment. It was about understanding that every person deserves fairness before their story is known. And as the truth continued spreading through the terminal, nobody realized that an even bigger revelation was still waiting. The quiet traveler who had been underestimated was connected to a level of authority and respect that would soon bring the entire situation into a completely different light. The atmosphere inside the airport terminal had completely changed. Even though the same people and the same surroundings remained, the announcements continued. Travelers continued walking toward their gates. The airport continued operating as it always did. But near the security area, everyone who had learned the truth about Marcus Reed now saw the situation differently. The quiet passenger who had been questioned moments earlier was not just another traveler. He was a Navy SEAL whose years of service represented commitment, discipline, and dedication to something greater than himself. Yet Marcus remained unchanged. He did not suddenly become louder. He did not demand attention. He did not use his background as a way to make others feel powerless. That was never who he was. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood facing a reality he had not expected. The assumptions he made at the beginning of the encounter were being replaced by facts. The person he believed needed to prove himself had already spent years proving himself through actions, not words. Marcus understood that moments like this revealed more than a person's identity. They revealed a person's character. Throughout his military career, he had learned that leadership was not about showing others how important you were. It was about accepting responsibility and treating people with respect. Those lessons stayed with him even when he was away from the battlefield and traveling like any other person. The discovery of Marcus's background created an uncomfortable realization for Officer Caldwell. The issue was not simply that he had misunderstood who Marcus was. The deeper issue was that he had made a decision about a person before understanding the full story. That was a lesson Marcus had seen many times throughout his life. People often judged what they could see, while ignoring everything they could not. Imagine standing in an airport where someone has already decided who you are before hearing your story. Imagine knowing you could end the misunderstanding immediately, but choosing patience because you believe the lesson is more important than the moment. Marcus made that choice. He wanted people to understand that respect should not begin after discovering someone's achievements. Respect should begin because every person deserves to be treated fairly. As more employees became aware of the situation, the conversation around the terminal changed. People were no longer focused on whether Marcus had the right to be there. They were focused on how quickly assumptions had shaped the entire interaction. Officer Caldwell began seeing something he had missed before. A badge could represent responsibility, but it did not automatically represent wisdom. A position could give someone authority, but character determined how that authority was used. Marcus carried no visible signs of his accomplishments when he entered the airport. He did not need them. The discipline he developed over years of service was visible through his actions. His calm response, his patience, and his professionalism showed more about him than any title ever could. But the situation was not finished yet. The information connected to Marcus's identity had revealed only part of the truth. There were still questions about why someone with his background was traveling quietly and why certain people in higher positions had been informed about the situation. The airport had already discovered that Marcus Reed was not an ordinary passenger. Soon, they would discover that his connection to service reached even further than they imagined. And when that next piece of information arrived, the meaning of the entire encounter would change once again. The airport terminal had become a place of reflection rather than conflict. The same area where Marcus Reed had once stood quietly under suspicion was now filled with a different kind of attention. People who had witnessed the encounter were beginning to understand that the first impression they formed was incomplete. The man they thought they knew was someone with a story far greater than what they could see. Marcus remained calm throughout the entire process. He did not seek approval from the people around him. He did not look for an opportunity to prove that he was important. His actions had already shown everything that needed to be known. Officer Ryan Caldwell stood with the uncomfortable realization that the situation had never been about whether Marcus had authority. It had been about whether people were willing to offer fairness before knowing someone's background. That difference changed everything. Marcus had entered the airport without a uniform, without recognition, and without any expectation that people would treat him differently. He believed that respect should exist before a person's achievements became visible. That belief came from years of military service where character mattered more than appearance. During his time as a Navy SEAL, Marcus learned that the strongest professionals were not those who constantly explained what they had accomplished. They were the ones who quietly carried responsibility and allowed their actions to speak. That lesson followed him into every part of his life. The situation at the airport became a reminder of that principle. A person could have decades of experience, years of sacrifice, and a reputation built through dedication, yet still be misunderstood within a few seconds. Marcus knew that because he had seen it happen in many different ways throughout his life. People often looked for visible signs of importance. They searched for uniforms, titles, and symbols. But some of the most meaningful qualities a person carried were invisible. Discipline, integrity, patience. Those were the things Marcus brought with him wherever he went. As the information surrounding his identity became clearer, more people began to understand why his response had been so different. He was not calm because he lacked confidence. He was calm because confidence did not require an audience. Imagine having every reason to explain yourself, but choosing not to because you understand that the truth will eventually stand on its own. Imagine knowing that one sentence could change the way everyone sees you, but deciding that the lesson is more important than the recognition. That was the mindset Marcus carried. Meanwhile, Officer Caldwell began to understand that authority required more than a position. It required awareness. It required fairness. It required the ability to recognize that every person standing in front of you has a story you may not know. The airport employee who first noticed Marcus's information continued reviewing the details connected to his travel records. The information confirmed what many were beginning to suspect. Marcus Reed was not simply a Navy SEAL with a history of service. There was another reason his name carried such significance. There was another level of respect connected to his identity. The situation that began as a misunderstanding was becoming something much larger. The people around Marcus had already learned that appearances could be misleading. Soon, they would learn that his connection to the highest levels of military leadership was even closer than anyone expected. And when that truth was finally revealed, the balance of the entire situation would change forever. The truth about Marcus Reed had started to change the way everyone viewed the situation, but the biggest revelation had not yet reached the entire airport. What people first saw as a simple misunderstanding was becoming a powerful reminder that a person's identity cannot always be measured by what is visible. Marcus remained exactly the same person he had been from the beginning. He did not change his attitude when people learned about his service. He did not suddenly demand recognition. He continued standing with the same patience and professionalism that had defined him long before anyone knew his name. The information connected to Marcus's background continued moving through official channels, and the significance of his identity became clearer. His years as a Navy SEAL were already impressive, but the deeper connection behind his service was what surprised those who reviewed the details. Marcus Reed was someone whose dedication had earned the trust of people at the highest levels of military leadership. The quiet traveler in the airport was not someone searching for attention. He was someone who had spent years accepting responsibility without needing praise. Officer Ryan Caldwell watched as the situation he thought he understood became something completely different. The confidence he had shown earlier was replaced by reflection. He began to understand that the biggest mistake was not simply failing to recognize Marcus's background. The bigger mistake was assuming that background was necessary before offering basic respect. Marcus had always believed that people should not have to reveal their accomplishments to be treated fairly. A person should not need a title, a uniform, or a position of authority to deserve dignity. That belief was one of the reasons he had chosen a life of service. During his military career, Marcus learned that leadership was not about being above others. It was about being responsible for others. It was about making decisions with fairness and understanding. Those lessons shaped every part of his character. Imagine standing in a crowded airport while strangers form opinions about you based on only a few moments. Imagine knowing that the easiest way to change their opinions would be to reveal everything you have achieved, but choosing not to because the real lesson is about how people are treated before they know your story. That was Marcus Reed. He was not interested in winning an argument. He was interested in showing the importance of character. As more people learned the truth, the atmosphere around the terminal became quieter. The attention was no longer focused on questioning Marcus. It was focused on understanding how quickly assumptions had taken control of the situation. Travelers who had witnessed the encounter began seeing the difference between having authority and using authority wisely. A badge could provide responsibility, but it could not replace judgment. A position could provide power, but it could not replace integrity. Then, a new message arrived through official communication channels. The information connected to Marcus's identity had reached people far beyond the airport. The situation had now gained the attention of a much higher level of military leadership. The name Marcus Reed carried importance, and the people receiving the information understood exactly why. What began as one officer questioning one passenger had become a moment that revealed a much larger lesson about respect, responsibility, and hidden identity. And when the final confirmation arrived, everyone would discover that Marcus's connection to the Pentagon was not just a detail in his story. It was the reason the entire situation was about to change. The final confirmation reached the airport at a moment when everyone involved had already begun to understand that the situation was much bigger than a simple misunderstanding. The message carried the information that connected Marcus Reed's identity, his years of service, and the respect he had earned throughout his military career. The quiet passenger standing in the terminal was not just a Navy SEAL. He was a person whose dedication had reached the attention of leaders responsible for protecting the values he had spent his life representing. Officer Ryan Caldwell listened as the reality became clear. The man he had judged within moments was someone who had spent years serving others with discipline and commitment. But Marcus did not focus on the recognition. He did not use the moment to embarrass anyone. He did not see the situation as an opportunity to prove that he was more important than the person standing across from him. Instead, he saw it as a chance to remind everyone of something far more important. Respect should never depend on discovering someone's title. It should begin with understanding that every person has a story. The attention around the terminal shifted completely. The people who had watched the encounter now saw Marcus differently, but Marcus himself had not changed at all. He was still the same person who entered the airport quietly, carrying his bag and preparing for his journey. His strength was never based on how others viewed him. It came from the values he carried when nobody was watching. Throughout his years as a Navy SEAL, Marcus learned that true leadership was not about demanding recognition. It was about showing responsibility, patience, and integrity in every situation. Those lessons guided him that morning. Officer Caldwell began to understand that the most important lesson was not about who Marcus was. The lesson was about how quickly assumptions could influence the way someone treats another person. A person's appearance, clothing, or position in a single moment could never reveal the full story of their life. Imagine meeting someone for only a few seconds and believing you already know everything about them. Imagine discovering later that the person you underestimated had spent years earning the trust and respect of others through dedication and service. That realization changes more than the situation. It changes the way people think. Marcus had every opportunity to respond with anger or use his status to create a different outcome. Instead, he chose professionalism. He chose understanding. He chose to let the truth speak without needing to force it. That choice revealed more about him than any title ever could. The airport encounter became a reminder that authority is not only found in uniforms, badges, or positions. Real authority comes from character. It comes from the way people act when they have the ability to prove their importance but choose humility instead. As Marcus continued his journey, he carried the same quiet confidence he had shown from the beginning. He did not leave the airport as someone who had won a confrontation. He left as someone who had shown a lesson. The greatest measure of a person is not how others treat them after discovering who they are. It is how they treat others before anyone knows their name. And that day, the quiet Navy SEAL in the airport proved that true strength never needs to announce itself. It simply speaks through actions, patience, and the respect a person earns long before the world discovers their story.